Welcome to IGTV Live. I'm Angeline Ong for IG, and it's a wonderful sunny Tuesday morning, 25th of April 2023. Coming up in today's program, dollar on the back foot ahead of that key inflation data, of course. And we've also got UBS looking at the acquisition of Credit Suisse. UBS, of course, is taking over, rescuing its rival and battled rival, might I add. And the rescue might be completed in the second quarter. And lots and lots of US earnings, as you know, coming out of the United States. McDonald's, Alphabet, Microsoft, and more will report. Ahead of that, just want to remind you that 12 Dow components and 178 companies on the S&P are scheduled to report earnings this week, including those big mega cap names like Google parent Alphabet. Let's take a look at the volatility index. Ahead of all that, as I said, it's a really, really key week for earnings. And as you can see here, the volatility index has come down quite remarkably since the middle of March, and also further back, as you can see here, where we had those concerns surrounding the banking system. But the volatility index has come down now to around the 20 mark. And this is also quite interesting given it's such a key earnings week. Perhaps this is an indication that many investors out there are heading into this big, heavy earnings season with a lot of calm, or it could be the calm before the storm, as I mentioned earlier. Google parent Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, just some of those big names reporting. Let's take a look at the pre-market picture now. Let's put up the FTSE for you. That's crude, looking also quite stable, but the FTSE, there you go. Looking like if volumes hold, we could see a slightly lower open, not by much, I have to say. The DAX, there you go, the Germany 40 on the platform, also a similar picture there, down around 1/10 or 0.2% ahead of the open. And it's kind of a wait and see pattern ahead of all those earnings. Overnight in Asia, I can tell you that it's been a mixed picture as well. The Nikkei higher there, Hang Seng and the Singapore index settling slightly lower. Chinese stocks fell a fifth session after data showed the country's economic recovery was uneven. Investors, of course, also worried about lingering geopolitical risks and being cautious ahead of all those earnings. Wall Street was an interesting one because the Nasdaq closed lower on Monday, underperforming the S&P 500, and the Dow ahead of those mega results. Taking a look at the pre-market there, as you can see, not much going on. I can tell you that if we see volumes stay the way they are, we could be looking at a flat open ahead of all those earnings. Now, newly appointed Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda is preparing the ground for his first rate decision later this week. Earlier this morning, he said there would be a possibility of raising interest rates if inflation and wage growth overshot expectations. But for now, the Bank of Japan needs to keep an ultra-loose monetary policy. Talking to the Japanese government, Kazuo Ueda said that, quote, in light of current economic, price and financial developments, it's appropriate to maintain monetary easing, now conducted through yield curve control. But if wage growth and inflation accelerates faster than expected and warrants tightening monetary policy, the Bank of Japan stands ready to respond by raising interest rates. Now, on Friday, as I mentioned earlier, the Bank of Japan is expected to keep interest rates and its monetary policy pretty dovish. Let's take a look at the yen for you. As you can see here, it's a slow trek upwards. That's the dollar versus the yen. Of course, if we get a surprise move by the Bank of Japan, then we could see this as an opportunity for those trading volatility on this cross. But at the moment, it's looking like a steady trek upwards. And from the 26th of March, we're seeing higher highs and following that green trend line upwards there. The Bank of Japan, though, is, as I said earlier, expected to keep to its dovish policy guidance. Now, later this afternoon, we also have the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price House Price Index. This, of course, gives investors and traders a look in on confidence as new home sales updates the picture on the US housing market and how much confidence home buyers have on the economy. At 3 p.m., the Conference Board's consumer confidence number is forecast to stay broadly unchanged at 104.2 in April after 104 in March. And API weekly crude oil inventories, don't forget, that's out at 9:30 p.m. Let's take a look now at the euro dollar. Another interesting cross here because the dollar is pretty much on the back foot. Yesterday, weaker than expected Chicago Fed national activity and Dallas Fed manufacturing indices weighed on the greenback. Now, currency traders are waiting on that consumer confidence figure, as well as first quarter GDP growth numbers Thursday and the PCE price index on Friday. The dollar's weakness, however, did help gold. I'm just bringing up spot gold for you. Help underpin gold, which is currently making its way towards the 2,000 mark again. Gold, of course, has hit the top of this trend line and made higher highs recently, making headlines for us. And if it continues on its upward trajectory, it could be looking to break this 2,050 mark relatively soon. To corporate news, Associated British Foods reporting a 3% fall in operating profit to £684 million. Group revenue rose 21%. The Primark owner confirms its guidance for a flat outcome in the full year. Moving on to banks now, and UBS's net profit fell 52% to just over $1 billion as it had to boost provisions linked to US residential mortgage-backed securities litigation by $665 million. The world's biggest wealth manager also reported inflows of $42 billion in the first 3 months of the year. Its flagship wealth management division received $28 billion in net new money. The bank also confirmed that the acquisition of Credit Suisse is most likely to be completed in the current quarter. UBS, as you remember, agreed to take over its embattled rival, for 3 billion Swiss francs and assume up to 5 billion Swiss francs in losses. Now, staying in Switzerland, we have Novartis as well, the pharmaceutical group, raising its 2023 profit forecast after posting better than expected sales for the first quarter. Novartis also confirming the Sandoz spin-off remains on track for the second half of this year. Looking out for Nestlé at the open, the group posting better than expected first quarter sales as higher prices offset tepid sales volume. Nestlé raised its prices by 9.8% during the first quarter, pushing through that inflation to its consumers and customers, but sales volumes fell by 0.5%. Now, over in the US, we have quite a few large companies reporting, starting with McDonald's. The group is expected to post adjusted earnings of $2.30 per share, which would be a 1% increase on the same quarter a year ago, while revenue is forecast to fall by 1.9% to $5.5 billion. Earlier in January, McDonald's announced a reorganization plan, which would involve job cuts and pay cuts. This plan is now underway since the beginning of April. As part of its plan to become more efficient and innovative, McDonald's has recently unveiled what it calls its first automated outlet. It's also tweaking its buns and burgers to ensure that its menu is also not leaving out those who are more health conscious. Also due to report before the open is General Motors. The street expects earnings of $1.71 per share on revenue of just under $39 billion. Last month, the group announced that its sales in the first quarter rose by 18% year-on-year to 603,000 vehicles. Now, for about a year, General Motors share price has been range-bound and is currently trading at the lower end of the range. Then after the US closing bell, two of the largest tech companies in the world out with numbers. Amazon expected to post earnings of $1.07 per share, which would be a 13% or so decline from the same quarter a year ago. The group's revenue should rise by 1.2% to $68.8 billion. Given the cyclical nature of the advertising market, revenue in that segment will be closely watched by investors, especially that it counts for more than 3/4 of the group's total revenue. The other tech giant to report after the closing bell, Microsoft. Earnings per share is forecast at $2.23, unchanged on last year, while revenue expected to rise 4% to just over $51 billion. Out of Microsoft's three business segments, cloud services has become the goldmine, and unsurprisingly, this will attract a lot of attention. The cloud contributes around 40% of the group's total revenue, and revenue in that division is expected to increase by 18%. Other US earnings today, if that wasn't enough, include Visa, General Electric, PepsiCo, Halliburton, Dow, Verizon, UPS, and more. We'll get you all those updates as they come on the platform. We'll be watching the big movers for you as well. Until then, we've got charting at 10:30, and that's it from me, Angeline Ong for IGTV.